We wanted to get your thoughts on these quarterbacks with these legendary upside articles that have come out recently. As we kind of transition to running back and wide receiver, I'd ask you if we could do more sleeperish and also bring in a little best ball element to it. And so we're gonna transition into this now, and I think people are gonna be pretty excited to find out who you were taking at these two positions as we get into kind of those deep best ball, especially pre-draft best ball leagues, because I mean it's fun getting to take guys that basically we have no idea what they're gonna do. So just rookie.
Yeah, no, I take a lot of rookies late for sure.
And looking, Shawn mentioned best ball, but we're going to stick just with dynasty for one more moment on the running backs. And this year might be a year where the entire first round of those rookie drafts ends up in super flex formats, being quarterbacks, wide receivers, and then Brock Bowers is the tight end, obviously. And there's a number of teams around the NFL that are looking for starting running back, creating the possibility that we might get somebody who rises up late, but it's probably going to take a substantial push to get somebody that's going to be even in the back end of that first round. With that in mind, I guess, do you think we should be do you agree with it first, and then should we be trying to accumulate more second round picks ahead of these drafts to try and take some, I won't say flyers, but upside plays on some of these athletes?
Yeah, I think once you get kind of into that like later part of the first round of rookie drafts, trading back a bit from there probably makes sense. Rich Rebar was making that case, and I tend to agree that we're not going to have the hit rate it starts to drop, I think, in this class, where there's like some true blue chip guys up top, and then there starts to be some good but fairly low floor bets from that point on. And so if you can take a couple cracks, I think that's pretty good. At running back, even without the ACL tear, I think Jonathan Brooks is kind of like a late first round rookie pick type of guy. I like Brooks. He doesn't I think part of it, you could maybe say that's a little unfair because he only, the injury cost him the rest of his one season where he wasn't behind Bijan Robinson. So his career would have been more impressive had it not been for the injury, and also having to have Bijan Robinson ahead of him and Roschon Johnson there as well, who's a, pretty capable, NFL caliber back, even if he's not a star. So, and was significantly older than Brooks. But Brooks isn't that great of a prospect. He's good, but he's far from elite, and then he's coming off the torn ACL. And then, the other backs in the class, I think, are kind of more like early second round type of bets. And the NFL doesn't seem that into them. So, it's like, I generally agree. I think we're probably, you're going to want to follow the strength of the class, which is general. You always want to be drafting rookies with the goal of hitting on the best rookies and not drafting for need. We don't get to decide what's in a class, and this class does not have much running. So if you need running backs, like, I don't know, go trade for Javonte Williams or something. Like, you don't reach for a running back over, really strong wide receiver prospect or quarterback prospect, because you kind of need to, feel like you're building your team that way. That's not really how I think rookie draft should be approached. So, in general, I think these guys are kind of more around that end of the first, early second type of values.
So, Pat, then I'm going to jump you kind of past the maybe trendy athletic backs who probably actually have a pretty high ceiling, but also 0-0 floor, but more expensive than some of these guys we're going to discuss. Braelon Allen, right? Round 14 pick in Underdog. I mean, it seems like right now he could be a third, maybe even mid to late third round pick in rookie drafts if he's not in a great situation. This is a guy over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown per game as a true freshman. He's going to be one of the youngest guys in the draft. So my question is he a rich man's version of all of the constantly overhyped big backs. I mean, think about all the guys from, the Alabama factory who, then go time in like the mid 4.6s, and people are like, yeah, they're still awesome. I mean, they're slow, but they're still awesome somehow. Or is this like a one-dimensional guy who shouldn't be a priority pick in fantasy?
I mean, I would take 4.6, Shawn. He didn't run at his pro day. He didn't run.
Well, that's what I've been asking people. Like, I think you should hide it if you're not athletic, but at a certain point, you're like, I mean, is he going to break 5.0? What's the floor here to how slow he is?
He's talking about a high ankle sprain. He can't run because of a high ankle sprain, but he jumped at the combine and he jumped bad. They were bad jumps. And then he's like, nah, I'm good with those. Like, hang on, you're not healthy, but you're healthier than you were like 3 weeks ago, right? So why don't you try to jump again? Because you're standing on really bad numbers. That I'm nervous about Braelon Allen's athleticism. And yeah, the jumps were a 32-inch vertical. That's the one that's really bad. And then a 9-foot, 9-inch broad jump, which isn't horrendous. But if you're then going to not run the 40, I have questions. I have questions about the athleticism for sure. And then it's a really weird profile where he comes in, he crushes right away as a 17-year-old. But then he has another very productive season, but it's less efficient. And then he's not as efficient in his final year. But then you like zoom out and you're like, this dude's going to play his entire rookie season at 20 years old. The comps that come up for him are in my stuff are like Jordan Howard, Deontay Foreman, Matt Jones, which is like kind of a bad comp, but also kind of a good one. Cause you're like, remember they gave him a job for no reason. That could happen. That's cool. But Isaiah Spiller comes up for me too. Another kind of young guy who just never did anything. And that's, I think, the risk with Allen. I mean, I think he could literally just like get drafted decently high and then just we never hear from him. Because he is one-dimensional, and he's 235 pounds. If that translates, he will have a role. But if he's just kind of below the athleticism needed to kind of get out there and have a legitimate role, then I don't see him he has exactly one path, and it's to be athletic enough to be that big early down banger. And so it kind of feels binary to me, where like an NFL team gives him that chance or they don't. And if they don't, then I don't know that we're ever going to get anything. I could see him though. Like I'd like him. He's one of these guys I like more in Dynasty than in Best Ball, because in Best Ball, like even as a hit, he could end up being like Zamir White is kind of a hit in Dynasty already because he looks like a starter. You can get out right now with the idea that he's a starter. He's got, around the top 100 picks in Best Ball now. He hasn't really done anything, but he is a big back who looks to be in line for a job now. And so I think Allen could gain value even if he never produces, because he's big, he's super young. And at some point we could be like, I think he's going to get the job. And, you could get out at a profit with that. But in Best Ball, he could be like a backup his entire rookie season. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Justin Herbert wants to know if there are enough carries for both Gus Edwards and Braelon Allen in their offense this year.
Yeah. And you're going to need to add someone else. Sorry, Justin.
Next up is Ray Davis. And he's somebody who's, I guess we'll say he's well-traveled, played at 3 different schools in his time in college, but finished with back-to-back campaigns of 100-plus scrimmage yards per game and 62 total receptions as well in one of those seasons, or both of those seasons. At 215 pounds with a 4.5 40, what are you thinking of him at the moment in round 16?
So is well-traveled just a nice Irish expression for old?
Yes. Another way to say it is seasoned. You could say seasoned.
Seasoned, yeah. Yeah, he's very well seasoned.
Mature. He's mature.
He's super mature. Yeah. In November, he will be the same age as Travis Etienne. It's an old man. It's an old prospect here.
You said he was an old prospect. I said he could have been an old prospector. But I don't know what Shawn said.
It sounded to me like maybe Travis Etienne was going to stop aging. Are they gonna, they're going to. But so is that a huge problem for you then? I mean, they're running backs. They're only going to play for a year.
No, it's not a huge problem. I think when as you talk yourself into, he's the reverse for me. I like him more in best ball than I do in dynasty because like he strikes me as
it used to be better in best ball than redraft. I've noticed now in the last two players we have better in dynasty than best ball.
Yeah, that's true. Better in dynasty. Yeah. But the reason I feel that way is that he strikes me a little bit like a Brian Robinson, where you hit on Brian Robinson, right? He immediately is like kind of the 1A or, in line to be the 1A after his rookie season. He's getting drafted right next to Antonio Gibson going into his second season. You take around, look what I have Brian Robinson. Aren't you guys excited? Who wants to trade for him? Crickets. Right. Then he's one of the bigger hits from that range of the draft this past year. You go, Brian Robinson starting. He's going to start his whole rookie contract probably now. Look at this. Isn't this great? No one wants him. So it's like that's kind of the archetype I think of this guy. Is like you're not. Or Devin Singletary. You're like he could give you production far beyond what you should have any reasonable expectations of. For where you're going to take him in rookie drafts, you're never trading him. It's almost like, he might as well be 29. Like you're not getting this guy off your roster. So are you using that production? And if you are, then like, I think in like one quarterback dynasty league, I play in some of these more shallow one quarterback dynasty leagues, like an FFPC style league, that kind of thing. If you're able to get Davis pretty cheaply and just have him be part of your running back crew, as you basically don't put capital into the position, he could be really nice for that kind of dynasty strategy. But if I'm taking like a bigger swing, if I'm like dreaming on a running back, it's not Ray Davis. And that's kind of why I think he's more interesting for best ball. Cause like, I think he is, we joke about him being like seasoned and mature and stuff, but that is kind of his profile, is that he's going to be someone who gets out there and can do a number of things in a way. And, I don't mean that he's going to break out in this way at all, but in kind of a Kyron Williams-y type of like, this dude can kind of do all the stuff. And so if his path was to get on the field as a receiving back, like I think he could do that. He's fairly versatile. If he was just asked to be kind of a reliable early down guy, I think he can do that too. He's like a little bit of a plotter is the concern, but he's, I think he probably will have like a decent success rate and stuff. So yeah, you're kind of, he's like a bet on solid production. He comped to DeAndre Washington in my stuff, which I think is like they're a little bit of a different player, but I think in a similar way of like Washington could kind of be used in a few different types of ways. He actually come to Jalen Warren too. Another guy who he got on the field as a receiving back, but is not just a receiving back. So that's, I think, Warren, I'm a huge fan of Warren. So I don't think Davis is going to have that kind of outcome, but it's same sort of, Benjamin was another guy like, this guy who can be out there and do a number of things. It has probably a couple different paths to getting on the field. So a higher floor dart throw in that sense.
I like the Brian Robinson comp and discussion there from the perspective of some of these guys, and Davis seems like that to me, although again, the actual team fit ends up mattering so much, but there's like potential for some sneaky high value touches, which I think for some of the players that we tend to get more excited about, there's potential for a sneaky percentage of low value touches, which, yeah, I mean, they can eventually add up, but they're probably not going to win you a ton of games. So, I mean, the guy who, I mean, I guess people already knew that Bucky Irving was not going to test well, but I mean, this is like a heartbreaking athletic profile because this guy has the best, easily the best combination of production and peripherals in this class. But if you're 192 pounds and then have sub NFL athleticism, that just doesn't work. except we just saw Kerrane Williams like win everything last year with basically exactly that profile. But if you don't have that comp, then I mean, you're like, not only is this guy not someone you should be emphasizing, but he's not even somebody you like need to know the name of. We have a drop of from 150 to 190 in Underdog ADP after the testing. So my question would be like, which price is more reflective of his value, and I mean, the price continues to fall. I mean, is he completely undraftable, or I mean, Pat, I love the guys who have actually done something in college, and he's done something. I mean, can we give him credit for that and add him to some teams?
Yeah, I actually struggled with Irving the whole way because he it's like a little Duke Johnson-y or something. In my stuff, they like this kind of back, I think, tends to get a little bit overvalued because it's like, man, look at it. He can kind of do everything. And like, if the NFL just doesn't care that he's a little undersized and they treat him like a regular running back, he's going to smash. And that never happens except the one time with Kerrane Williams. He does comp. Kerrane Williams is the top guy that comes out for his comps because, he was productive and is extremely unathletic and is undersized. So, which is the Kerrane Williams mold. But Eric Gray, is another comp. Marcus Murphy, who I'm not even sure who that is, but he's in my spreadsheets.
Irish.
Yeah, it wasn't very good in the NFL. But was drafted. I definitely struggle with Irving because with this type of archetype, excuse me, you want him to be a legit difference maker in the receiving game, and I don't think that Irving is. He's good, but I don't think he's like, he had 1.39 yards per route run over his career. That's fine, but it's not even kind of James Cook level, and it's way below. Like Jahmyr Gibbs was 2.47 over his career. Like those. Jonathan Brooks is at 1.46. So he's lower than Brooks. Brooks, I think, he's a versatile guy. He's like going to be maybe in the DeAndre Swift mold where he's used a fair amount as a receiver, but he's not like crushing it as a receiver. And I think Bucky Irving's kind of in that same tier where, yeah, he's going to be fine as a receiving back, but I don't know that he's now at a point where he needs to force his way on the field as like a specialist almost, right? Because of the athleticism and the size and the draft capital now probably being day 3.
Is there any element where the type of offense that the Rams, ran last season and that Williams was, wildly effective at? I mean, still, if you look at some of the per play numbers, I mean, it's more that they created a lot of fantasy value as opposed to being this true reality difference maker. But can we claim that might help? That it's more possible now than it was even 5 years ago, certainly than it was 10 years ago?
I mean, yeah, like an 80% snap share would definitely help. But I don't know where he gets it.
Okay, so we're gonna
to take it serious, I mean, I think Irving's outlook's probably mildly improved by Kerrane Williams' success, but like I think Williams' success really comes down to trust. Like McVay really, really trusts Williams and also wants to be kind of in the true lead back game. He's going to always operate that way. So that would be, I don't know enough about that part of it with Irving. Like, is he the type of guy who a coach is just going to absolutely love? Because I think that's really been a big part of the story for Williams.
As we jump down even further, or kind of move into these final rounds for, the pre-NFL draft best ball, we joked earlier about just how slow Allen might be. We have a Notre Dame back with, pretty good final year production who did run a 4.7. And so, I mean, that part isn't great. There are other parts of his testing were a little better. We have Will Shipley, who didn't run, but then performs well at his pro day. And his is a bizarre profile where, big time recruit. And then as a freshman, kind of looks like that, maybe in a different profile than Allen. But I mean, he's the second guy that we have who is very interesting. in terms of where we thought he was going to be a couple years ago, but not necessarily where he is now. Of course, he's not priced that way. I mean, he's priced to where, I mean, it doesn't take much to get a look other than, you burn roster spots. And anytime that you're burning those spots, you're closing up other flyers. And then obviously when we get to Dynasty, it's a little bit different story. Either of those guys, players that you are including in your portfolio as you're drafting right now?
Estime I was kind of out on when he ran that 4.71 because I generally feel like teams are just going to be factoring that into the draft capital. But he did run, I think, a 4.61 at his pro day, and that made me feel kind of better enough to start mixing him in a little bit again. Shipley, I've had trouble getting all that excited about. His breakaway percentage was 32%, which is pretty terrible. 0.97 yards per route run. Not great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. And so you're kind of like this athleticism that was wildly good. 4.45 40, a 6.88 3-cone, 38.5-inch vertical. Like he crushed it, but you're not really seeing it in the production.
Well, and I mean,
so
he came in
to
the college with that belief that he could do those things, and he's got some highlights that people get excited about. But I mean, is there anything where it could be? The team that he signed on for and played with was not the team that he thought he was going to be getting when you talk about where they were 3 years ago versus where they are now. But yeah, I mean, the kind of scouting profile or what you believed about him, and then the athletic testing, and then what he actually has been recently, not the same thing.
No. And he broke tackles at a decent rate and, broke a fair amount of tackles per game, which, he's not like a huge back. That's like the one part. He's 206. So he's not tiny, 5'10", 206, but 5'11", sorry. But he's on the smaller side for an NFL back, but he looks like, he could handle some of that early down stuff. And then he ran a lot of routes. So he was involved in the receiving game, even if he wasn't super efficient. So that would be like kind of the ups. Like he's kind of in that same mold, maybe of like, he can accumulate enough touches, maybe Singletary-esque, where he's just kind of out there doing enough of the stuff and isn't leaving the field. But even that's a little thin because he wasn't one of these backfield dominator rating guys. We talked about Ray Davis before, like his backfield dominator ratings every season were awesome. And he played at 3 different schools, I mean, when you're 25, you can play for a few different programs, but Will Shipley wasn't like that. His backfield dominator rating is pretty middling. So he wasn't a backfield unto himself. And so if that's your hope is in the NFL, then yeah, he doesn't stand out to me in any major ways. And then Estime, talking about breakaway yards, like that's actually a concern for him as well. He wasn't awesome as a breakaway runner. And actually, when you compare him to Braelon Allen, because it is a little bit of a similar type of bet, Estime had a 38% breakaway percentage, which isn't great. Allen was at 43%, which is significantly better. And Estime had 29 breakaway yards per game, whereas Braelon Allen was up at 44. So if we're nervous about Allen's long speed, and there are clips of him getting caught from behind, but he brought more to the table as that kind of long explosive runner than Estime. So you do see the 4.71 speed showing up a little bit in some of Estime's production. He broke a lot of tackles. He was very productive, highly graded runner, more versatile receiver. 1.12 yards per route run is not bad, but you're looking at probably like screens, swing passes type of stuff, like very basic stuff. He only ran 8.2 routes per game. That's among the lowest in the class. So he wasn't really a part of the receiving game, even though he's fairly efficient, kind of maybe Kenneth Walker-y at the next level in terms of what he's doing in the receiving game. It's not that he like can't do it, but I think he's probably complemented with a third down back And so that's part of it too with Estime. I'm like, what am I winning here? It's like a 2-down runner, not the most explosive, backed up by a poor 40. Draft capital now a concern. So I've been mixing him in a little bit more recently, but that was after basically being like, I'm not taking him for a while.
So Shawn teased to the start, want to get those deep names. So we're going to jump back to Dynasty, but obviously these guys may be completely undrafted at the moment in best ball as well. So every so often I get a message, about shows, rankings that, my draft is happening now. What they have a question about a rookie. My draft is happening right now. So it's before the NFL draft, so
better preparation, people. Come on.
But
you just panic emailing Colm.
Do you not get these messages like they'll send the question? No, they'll send the question
right now.
You get a question, and then it'll, okay, I'll try and answer this on the show next week, and it'll be like, my draft's at 10 a.m. Eastern. You're like, okay.
I'd like to think that Colm's getting these like as people are on the clock in fast drafts.
I don't know.
45 seconds.
Yeah,
and by the time I get them with time difference, there's often 6 hours have passed through when I've seen them. But
guys, can we pause the draft? I'm going to message this guy in Ireland. As soon as he wakes up, I'll pick.
So with that in mind, that's the pressure that you're under here for the extra preparation for people. Who is your favorite, maybe 4th round rookie running back if you're on the clock in a pre-NFL draft, dynasty draft?
Man, I mean, I'm taking a fair amount of Dylan Laube. It's kind of that like true deep shot because he has that one thing. Like, what's this guy do? How does he, get his way onto a field? 2.30 yards per route run is like, okay, that's going to like get you noticed. That's like at the high end of efficiency. He didn't run that many routes. He's only at 12.8 routes per game. And so he's not as clean as a bet, a pure receiving bet as we sometimes get, but still pretty good. Smaller program, New Hampshire. I mean, he, smaller, lower level of competition. But another one of these guys who was his backfield, 86% backfield dominator rating, 94% at his peak. That's kind of the Philip Lindsay type of archetype, where you're getting the guy who's just doing everything, even if he's not going to do that at the NFL level. Blair Andrews has written about this as he's developed this metric. I mean, I think it's very valuable, as he's pointed out, for identifying late round hits, not just because it's like, oh, this guy's going to be a workhorse because he was a workhorse in college. It's like, no, this dude is capable. He can handle a variety of duties, even if he's going to get pigeonholed as a receiving back in the NFL, which I think he will. That's still a positive sign for his ability to get on the coach's radar, that he was, completely trusted in college. So he's probably the guy of those late round dart throws that I'm most excited about. Tyrone Tracy is another guy. Shawn, do you have any thoughts on him? He's someone I'm still kind of digging into him, but he's another one of those like pure receiving bets because he's a converted wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrone Tracy is Antonio Gibson 2.0, but better, right?
All right.
That's what I want to say, but the other element is that whenever he has his next birthday, he'll be like twice as old as Travis Etienne. I mean, this guy is not coming into the NFL as a young player. So on the previous name there, I absolutely love that one. Is this like a Rex Burkhead 2.0 kind of situation? I mean, a lot of very close similarities there, if I'm looking at this correctly.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we're betting on, is that he's kind of a Rex Burkhead. And I like the Burkhead comp because it kind of notes that he can get on the field in a couple different ways. Like, he's going to be probably like a rotational contributor, but he can add not just as like a pure it's third down and long distance come out on the field. Like, he can be, used in a little bit more, some more interesting ways. Danny Woodhead gets used as a comp for him a fair amount. Chase Edmonds also comes up in my stuff. And I think, Chase Edmonds is, he was a receiving back, but he also did get some stuff as a runner. And I think that's what you're hoping to hit on, that he kind of gets on the field because what he has as a receiver, but he's doing enough and he's capable enough that you don't have to pull him off the field, if you're actually going to call a run play.